Good morning, students. I am Dr. Angela, and today I am talking to third year students and sixth semester, which is Elective-B. And the topic the paper that we are dealing with is psychological competencies. Okay, so in the psychological competencies, we have around 5 blocks, right? So each block has 3 units. So we have block one, we have introduction, competencies, personality, and life skill. In block two, we have the life skills continued. We have the cognitive skills, psychosocial skills, and self-management skill. In block three, we have the psychosocial competencies, emotional intelligence, positive psychology, psychological capital, and psycho-cybernetics. And then in block four, we have the personal management, that is the unit 10, where we talk about stress management, unit 11 is mindfulness, and unit 12, personality development. The last block, that is block 5, is assessment, right? Where we have unit 13 for self-analysis, unit 14 for psychological test and life skill training, unit 15 enhancing psychological competencies, and then we have the model question papers and the summary. After every unit, we have the summary, and then we have even the glossary, the vocabulary, the meanings, and all that. Okay, so welcome to this class. We have around 6 classes for this paper, and the classes are on 8th, 9th, and 10th for this week. That will be the same time between 12 and 1, right? And then the other classes will be on the 16th, and the other one will be on 22nd, 16th, 17th, 22nd. Okay, so with this, I begin the introduction to understanding what is psychological competencies, right? In a simple way, we have to understand what is the psychological competency. It is a measurable pattern of knowledge, skills, abilities, behavior, and other characteristics that an individual needs to perform roles and responsibilities successfully. Thus, competencies specify what individuals need to do and the behaviors they should undertake, right, for certain activities, tasks, or roles to perform their responsibilities in an effective manner. Competencies are often combinations of knowledge, skills, and abilities necessary to perform a given role. In practice, various competencies often overlap and cannot be required or attained easily. When people do not feel capable and ineffective, or do not feel capable and effective, their motivation falls and they suffer ill being. On the other hand, the experience of mastery leads to feelings of personal satisfaction, strength, interest, and well being. So, the fundamental connection between the competence and the human prime suggests that it is a psychological prerequisite for the growth and psychological health. Thus, competence promotes the pursuit of challenging, and deeply satisfying experiences and is a criteria for psychological growth and well-being. Another important criteria for psychological growth is the individual's personalities. An individual's personality is a combination of traits and patterns that influences their behavior, thought, motivation, and emotion. It drives the individuals to consistently think, feel, and behave in specific ways. In essence, it is what makes each individual unique. Personality is the result of the combination of factors such as biological factors, socio-cultural factors, psychological factors, etc. Right? The personality of the individual is a product of continuous and cumulative interaction among various factors. Therefore, a balanced personality is important for developing psychological competencies. Now, life skills are the skills that are necessary for desirable for full participation in everyday life. They are the abilities for adaptive and positive behavior that enables humans to deal effectively with the demands and challenges of life's problem. Developing life skills such as critical thinking, problem solving, empathy, self-awareness, and interpersonal skills will be enhanced through psychological competence of an individual. So what are the units we are going to cover in this first chapter? Is unit 1, that is all about competencies, and then unit 2, that is about personality, and then we have the unit uh, three, that is the life skill. So the objective of the first understanding of competency is that we learn to define competencies, know the importance of competencies, and we also describe the psychological competencies models, right? And mark the psychological and explain the markers of psychological competencies. Okay. So the competency means that an individual has an ability to do something well, that they are capable of performing a task or job effectively. Competence include the knowledge and the skills that is required to solve problems. They can range from simple competencies needed to solve everyday problems to complex competencies required to run a multinational company. This competency is a positive attribute and people require it more. However, some cannot be competent just by gaining some knowledge. Rather, the attainment of competence requires feedback and support from the environment. When an event in an environment increase positive competence, that is positive information and feedback, right? Interest and engagement will be enhanced. But when the event in the environment diminishes perceived competence, that is demeaning and criticism, interest and engagement will be hindered. So competency is something that needs to be practiced so that it can be used effectively in a wide range of appropriate situation and all the right time. Let's look at some of the definitions given by some of the psychologists, right? So the dictionary deals competence as the state of quality of being properly or qualified. Competence connotes motivation and action to achieve a level of capability. It also refers to individuals' capability and demonstrated ability to understand and do certain tasks by education and training in particular profession or specially thereof. Studies on competency indicate that it covers complicated and extensive concepts, and different scientists have different definitions of competence. Okay, so I'm just reading a few of them and then you continue to read the others. So Hayes, 1979, he talks about competencies as generally include knowledge, motivation, social characteristics, and roles or skills of one person in accordance with the demands of the situation. So when you are expected to take a a session or teach something, one needs to feel competent. That means that needs to have that skill. One needs to have that capability. Suppose you are a music teacher and you're teaching some instrument, you should know the instrument, you should be capable of that instrument and should be competent enough to be able to play the instrument so that you should be able to teach it to your students. Okay, so that's what you should have, the knowledge, then you should have the motivation, and you should also have the social characteristics of and roles or skills that one person in accordance of the demands of the situation. Let's take another we added one 2001 ICB IMPA competence baseline. Competence is a group of knowledge, personal attitudes, skills, and related experiences which are needed for person's success. Okay, just as I told you, it is very important that if you want to understand whether you are competent, it is important to know whether you have the knowledge, whether you have the skills or attitudes, right? That is related to the competencies. Okay, let's take one more. Rankin 2002, who says a collection of behavior. Competencies means a collection of behaviors and skill which people are expected to show in their work. Okay, then we have the other two that you read it, the definition I almost explained to you. Okay, so if someone is able to do the required task at the target proficiency level, they are competent in that area. Competency is sometimes thought of being shown in action in situation and context that may be different the next time a person has to act. In emergencies, competent people may react in the situation following behavior they have previously found to succeed. So, a competent person would be able to need to interpret the situation in the context and to have the repertoire of possible actions to take and have trained in the possible action. Regardless of training, competence would grow through experience and to the extent an individual's capacity to learn and adapt. However, research has found that it is not easy to assess competencies and competencies development. Okay, so now we know what competencies is all about. It involves skills, it involves attitudes, it involves certain characteristics and traits, right? in any given situation or environment, right? Now, why do we need competency? What is the need for competency? Right? It's a psychological need to exert a meaningful effect on one's environment. It refers to the innate personality, right, to develop a skill and ability and to experience effectiveness in the actions. So, competence promotes the pursuit of knowledge, of challenging and deeply satisfying experiences, the criteria for psychological growth and well being. Competence also promotes the pursuit of challenging and the experience of not only this, but when people do not feel capable and effective, their motivation falls, right? And they are not able to perform. They feel ill, right? On the other hand, experience of mastery, like repetitive doing of the same talent that you possess, of whether to sing, whether to play a music, or whether to take a session, or whether to take a class, right? If you are doing this repeatedly, then what happens? You are able to gain mastery on your competencies. That leads to a feeling of personal satisfaction, strength, interest, and well-being. This need for competence, right? The psychological need for competence is universal. It is essential for the individuals across all culture. The need for competence feels persistent, sustained effort, and attention, and the determination to improve. It is the reason people generally prefer tasks that are challenging rather than boring or easy. In other words, the need for competence drives the desire to seek optimal challenges. When people engage in optimally difficult and complex activities, the talents and skills are stimulated at a developmentally suitable level. This produces a deep, satisfying perception of competence in the moment, which generates interest and energy for continued activity, right? So, satisfying the need for confidence because individuals are continuously and fundamentally involved in an ongoing exchange with the environment, the sense of perceived competence depends largely to the degree to which social environment can provide competence satisfying conditions. So there are three important ways in which the social environment can help to facilitate perceived competence, right, as follows. So one is providing guidance, right? So when there is a guidance, no, it is easier for the person to be able to, move towards competency. And then there is a feedback, right? When we are able to take regular feedback and learn from the feedback that we get, maybe from our students, maybe from the sessions and whatever form, right? And tolerating errors and failures. That is, we should have the capacity not just to learn, but also to be able to take the feedback, to be able to identify and tolerate those errors and failures so that we are able to learn from it. Okay. So next, now we move to the psychological competencies model, which is given in your book. Okay. So in this model, there are four stages of competence or the conscious competence learning model that relates to psychological states involved in the process of progressing from incompetence to competence in a given skill. So now you look at this diagram, right at the bottom line is a unconscious incompetence. Next to it is a conscious incompetence. And the third one is a conscious competence. And right at the top is a unconscious competence. Let's look at each one of them and learn from it. Okay. So management trainer Martin Broadwell described the model as a four levels of teaching, right? This model was also used by Gordon Training International in the 70s, which was called as four stages of learning any skill. The four stages suggest that the individuals are initially unaware of how little they know or how unconscious they are of their incompetence. As they recognize their incompetence, they consciously acquire a skill and then consciously use it. Eventually, the skill can be utilized without it being consciously thought through. The individual is said to have then acquired unconscious competence. So the four stages of confidence deals with the learning stages. Okay. So the first one is the first one is the unconscious incompetence. Let's understand what it is. Now, uncompetence Unconscious incompetence is that the individual does not understand or know how to do something and does not recognize the deficient. That means the individual has no understanding and the individual is unaware that the person is not having a particular quality or particular quantity or particular talent or capacity. They may deny the usefulness of the skill. Okay, they'll think, well, what is the need of using this skill? The individual must recognize their own incompetence and the value of the new skill. So once they learn to understand themselves that they do not have the capacity, they should be open to learn the new skill, right? And the length of the time an individual spends in the stage depends on the strength of the stimulus to learn. If one does not know that there is a problem, is less likely to engage the solution. For example, a research scholar, when writing the thesis, initially may not recognize the importance of good writing skills. They may fail to understand that the research needs good writing skill, right? So he may not have any kind of awareness, and without any understanding, they may maybe getting into that maybe later on may not know, but they will learn to value if they learn the skills, because if they are doing the research, this can be a very great strength. So that is what is unconscious incompetence, right? Then we go to the conscious incompetence. What is conscious incompetence? Though the individual does not understand or know how to do something, they recognize the deficit. They recognize that they don't have this in them, as well as the value of a new skill in addressing the deficit. When the individual is aware of the knowledge or the skill gap and understands the importance of acquisition of new skill, he will start learning a new skill. The making of mistakes can be integral part of learning process, right? So again, we take the same example in research world. Understanding the guidelines, the research scholars will be able to recognize or is competence or the incompetence. Okay, so now we move to the conscious competence. What is conscious competence? Where the individual understands or knows how to do something. However, demonstrating the skill or knowledge requires concentration. It may be broken down into steps, and there is a heavy conscious involvement in executing the new skill. So we continue with the same example where the person puts a lot of effort, right, in learning this skill, and that's how he or she learns a new skill, because he knows he's conscious about his incompetence, and he puts his effort to make sure that he learns the skill. The last one is the unconscious competence. What is unconscious competence? The individual has had so much practice with the skill that it has become second nature, that it can be performed easily. As a result, the skill can be performed while executing another task. The individual may be able to teach others depending upon how and when it was learned. For example, the writing skill learned in the process of writing, the thesis is also used for writing the skills. It can also be driving. If you are driving for a very long period of time, right? So you gain the competency and it is easy for you to drive even without being very conscious. Most of the time, driving is an unconscious, or even typing, right? When you are typing on the computer, and if you are so used to typing for a very long time, sometimes you can even look at the person, you can read something without even look at the typewriter, you can continue to type. Okay, so this comes under the unconscious incompetence. Now, markers of psychological competencies. Now, it is important to every individual to attain a predetermined and clearly articulated level of competence in a given domain or a proficiency activity. The acquisition of competence along with development of capability to adapt to change, exhibiting sound judgment and wise action in complex, unique, and uncertain situations involving connecting values and ethical stances, generating new knowledge. Competencies are combination of knowledge, skills, attitudes that individuals develop and apply for successful learning, living, and working. The markers of psychological competences emphasize the aspects of learning that apply within and across all areas of individual life. Some of the markers of psychological competencies are explained below. What are they? Let us look at it. One is the critical thinking. One is a critical thinking. Now, what is it? Which is involve reasoning and criteria to conceptualize, evaluate, or synthesize ideas. Individuals reacting on their thinking to improve it, right? They challenge assumptions behind thoughts, beliefs, or actions. People should value honesty and fairness and open mindedness. So, the critical thinking is characterized by the following: questioning and analyzing evidences, assertions, or assumptions. So we accept nothing at face value, but we always question, we analyze, and we try and see if we can make assumptions. Applying reasoned approaches or relevant criteria to conceptualize, analyze, or make judgment. Okay, so reasoning is very important. And then reflecting upon and evaluating, right? Reasoning behind thoughts, beliefs, and action, and then putting together, that is synthesizing thoughts and information to discover or extend understanding, demonstrating intellectual integrity, fairness, and open mindedness. The next one is problem solving, which involves selecting strategies and resources to move from what is known to what is sought. Individuals analyze situations, create plans of action, implement solutions. They evaluate alternatives and their consequences. They should approach challenges with creativity, flexibility, and determination. The problem solving is characterized by identifying what is known and what is required to clarify a problem, exploring problem solving strategies using relevant information, resources, or criteria, assessing options to generate course of action, evaluating the impact of possible solutions to carry out the most viable option, approaching challenges with creativity, flexibility, and determination. And the next one is managing information, right? It also involves organizing and using specific information for specific purposes. Individual access, interpret, evaluate, and share information from a variety of digital and non-digital sources. They should be ethical and effective in how they use and share information. People should not rely on reliability value. People should value reliability, validity, and integrity of information. Managing information is characterized by accessing information from various variety of digital and non-digital sources, synthesizing or organizing multiple pieces of information to enhance or clarify understanding, evaluating authenticity, reliability, or validity to appropriately interpret or use information, and using sharing or storing information effectively and ethically. The next one is creativity and innovation. Also involves generating, applying ideas to create something of value. Individuals recognize opportunities to apply ideas in new ways. They should be open and to play with new ideas, take risk, and adapt to changing condition, demonstrate optimism, initiative, right, ingenuity, creativity, and innovation are characterized by recognizing opportunities and imagining possibilities to apply new ideas in newer ways, exploring or playing with ideas, finding materials or processes to create something new, evaluating and adapting ideas, innovative materials or processes in response to feedback or emerging condition, and also communicating in collaboration. Okay, you know what communication is? Sharing of ideas through oral, written, non-verbal, right? Engage in formal and informal exchange with others. Consider how culture, context, and experience impact messaging people. Okay, and then clarifying purpose of intention of a message and related to audience, context, or culture. Considering perspectives, emotions, experiences while seeking shared understandings, expressing ideas or concepts using appropriate language, conventions, or protocol, demonstrating respect and responsibility when communicating with others. And the other one is a collaboration. Collaboration is again, right, working with others, sharing responsibilities, supporting others to achieve common goals, demonstrating sensitivity to diverse cultures, audience, context, exhibiting reciprocity and valuing flexibility, compromise, and contribution. And then we come to cultural and global citizenship. What is it? Involves actively engaging with cultural, environmental, political, or economic system, where people advocate for dignity and well-being of individuals and communities. They should value equity and diversity and believe in the capacity to make a difference. Okay, so when we are talking about culture and global citizenship, which is characterized by, considering diverse perspectives, examining interaction between cultural, environmental, political, and ecosystems and communities, right? Analyzing various ways in which decisions are made within the context or within the control, evaluating, uh, um, exhibiting reciprocity and trust when shared roles or ideas, valuing flexibility, compromise, and contributing to others to nurture positive working relationship. Then, yeah, and then we have evaluating an impact of decisions, dignity and well-being, valuing equity and diversity, and believing in the capacity to make a difference. Then we have personal growth and well-being that involves managing intellectual, emotional, physical, social, and spiritual aspects of living, of individuals' set of learning, careers, or wellness goals, and work towards them, identifying interest, values, skills, set of learning, career goals, exploring and selecting or adapting strategies and resources that support personal growth, making choices, taking action to promote safety, well-being of self, building healthy relationships, to support and well-being of others, demonstrating optimism, flexibility, or resilience. Okay, this competence connotes the capability of critical thinking, analysis, the successful exercise of professional judgment in accessing a situation, making decisions about what to do or what not to do is based on that assessment and the ability to evaluate and modify one's decision as appropriate to reactive practice. These actions must be executed in accordance with ethical principles, standards, guidelines, and values of the profession that require public verification. Further, competence is developmental as what is expected differs depending on the individual stage of professional functioning. In addition, competence is context dependent as different competencies such as each competency and execution of each competence varies depending on the setting and the environment. Competencies are element of competence. Competence are composed of knowledge, attitude, skills, which are coherent as group necessary for professional practice. They correlate with performance, can be evaluated against well accepted standards, and can be enhanced through training and development. Okay, so with this, we finish the introduction, that is the chapter 1 on unit 1 on competencies, right? You have questions there, and there is summary given to you, right? So, and there's also model questions given to you, glossary. Go through all this because it is so important for you to understand, and you will be able to better understand whenever you are able to go through all the models, all the questions, and the glossary item in case you are stuck somewhere. Okay, and then there's also check your progress to know whether you have been able to understand. Now we move to the next. So what is next? Unit 2. What is unit 2? It is all about personality, right? So, the objective of this unit is to know the nature of personality, explain the determinants of personality, explain the psychological determinants, biological determinants, and social determinants. Okay. So, this is how we have to be able to understand what the personality is all about, right? So, let us understand the term personality. Now, what is this term personality? It is derived from the Latin word persona, which means mask, right? The study of personality can be understood as the study of mask that people wear, right? There are persons that project people's that people project and display, but also include inner parts of the psychological experience, which is collectively called as self. In psychology, the term personality is used to mean a hypothetical construct or an agency which explains the integration of different behavioral process resulting in meaningful behavior in such a way as to make one person different from others. The term personality therefore explains both um, generally, yeah, explains both, yeah, generally and also in individually in behavior. Okay, again, there are certain definitions we have about personality. So there are different people who have said, let us take one or two definitions here. So we take what Kimball Young has stated on personality. Personality is a patterned body of habits, traits, attitudes, and ideas of an individual, right? As these are organized externally into roles and statuses, and they are to relate internally to motivate, to motivation, goals, and various aspects of self. Okay, that is one definition. Another definition we'll take by Alport, which says personality is a person's pattern of habits, attitudes, and traits which determine its adjustment to the environment. According to Robert Park Ernest, personality is the sum and the organization of the traits which determine the role of the individual in the group. So, personality is a totality of habits, attitudes, and traits that one possesses. Okay, so you read up for more, right? Now, let us look at the two main approaches to the study of personality. So, one is a psychological approach that considers personality as a certain style peculiar to the individual, and sociological approach that considers personality in terms of status of the individual or the group. Through these, though there are differences in views, all psychologists agree on certain common characteristics, right? So the understanding of the nature of personality will be clear if we go through the characteristics of personality. So what are the characteristics? Let's take it one by one. One of the most important characteristics of the personality is sense of uniqueness. Now, what is uniqueness? Uniqueness is what a person possesses certain traits which are very unique to him or her. So, no two persons, even identical twins, they cannot have the same attributes or the same qualities because every person is totally unique. They are so unique that you cannot be, you cannot be copied. They cannot be replicated, because those traits are inherent in them, which makes them unique. Okay, so that is the first one, the nature of the person. Second one is the organization. Okay, it's just not one or more aspect, but it's the total integrated behavior woven into whole. The greater degree of organization, the more healthy and normal the person is. Okay, so it's just not the trait, but it's the whole organization of the personality. Next is the consistency or stability. Now, what is this? It is again recognizable from situation to situation by consistent characteristics that are reflected in the behavior of the individual. The next one is a dynamic. What is this dynamism? Although personality of an unique individual remains stable to a large extent, it can't be said as static, right? So the personality is always dynamic and it is continuously in the process of change and modification. Okay. Then comes the self-consciousness. What is it? Personality exhibits self-consciousness and it is the proud possession of human being. Man is described as having a personality when the idea of self enters into his consciousness. And then we have the psychophysical systems. What are they? Personality is neither exclusively physical nor is exclusively mental. Similarly, it is neither the product of hereditary exclusively nor is the product of a acquired behavior or learning. So, organization of personality entails the functioning of both body and mind. So, psychophysical symptoms composed of habits, attitudes, sentiments are the product of hereditary endowments and acquired life experiences of the individual. Another important last nature is the social. Personality is completely social, right? Personality has an existence only in relation to the external world. An individual's relation with his environment, his feelings, attitudes are the basic to the idea of personality. An integrated personality is one which makes harmonious adjustment to the environment, particularly in the social environment. Thus, personality is the sum of ideas, attitudes, values of the person, which determines his role in the society and forms an integral part of his character. It is an acquired as a result of participation in group life. As member of the group, he or she learns certain behavior, system, symbolic skills, which determines his ideas, attitude, and social skills. So that is all about the nature of personality. Now let's move to determinants of personality. Right. So the personality of the individual is shaped or formed by the influence of many factors. Right. So what are they? They are a combination of biological factors, psychological factors, and social cultural factors. Right. So, what is this biological factors that we are talking about? Biological determinants of personality. Right. So, the biological factors are the biogenic by nature and includes aspects such as hereditary, physics, and physical condition, endocrine glands, and nervous system. Right. Hereditary is as important factor in the personality formation. Almost every form of personality has it attributed to heredity. In the field of behavior genetics, the Minnesota study of teams read a part in a well study known as the genetic basis for personality. The research was conducted with twins from 79 to 99. In studying 350 pairs of twins, including pairs of identical and fraternal twins reared together and apart, researchers found identical twins whether raised together or part of similar personalities. Right? And then these findings suggest the heritability of some personality traits, some personality traits implying that some aspects of personalities are largely controlled by genetics. So multiple twin studies have found that identical twins do have a higher correlations in personality traits and fraternal twin. Okay. Now let us look at some of the physical conditions, which is an important factor of the biological factor determinant. Okay. So the factors that is affecting the personality is the physical factor, physical characteristics, influence of individual's lifestyle, his mode of behavior, action, tendencies. Okay. Now, when you look at the physical differences, especially in terms of height, weight, physical defects, and health, etc., you'll find that there is so much of a difference. The child who is short, structured may develop a feeling of insecurity, or if other person teases him. Same thing can happen if they are tall also. If they are too tall in the class, they may feel embarrassed because they are taller than the rest. Next is the weight. Similarly, if the person who is overweight, his playmates, class fellows, and friends may tease him and they will develop inferiority complex. But if they are too thin also, this can happen. In physical defects, that is, physically handicapped children have no well developed personality as compared to normal children, right? Blindness or weak sight, deafness, dull hearing directly influences the development of personality. And then we have the health and the strength. A person who has good health, strength, energy, and vigor generally develops emotionally balanced attitude towards life and takes part in the various competition. On the other hand, a person who is physically inferior develop unbalanced personality and cannot take part in the other competitions. Okay, so we move to the endocrine glands. So this is part of the biological determinants. Right? Now, what are they? They are the glands. They send the secretion directly to the blood without the ducts. These secretions are called hormones. Those hormones are responsible for many changes in the personality of the individual. Now you see how personality and the biological determinants are connected. Okay, so different glands secrete one or more type of hormones, which affects the personality. Some of them are the adrenal glands, which are the thyroid gland, pituitary glands, and sex gland or the gonad. Endocrine glands play an important role in the development of the personality of the individual. Their malfunctioning leads to various physical and mental deficiencies. Okay. Now, adrenal gland. The malfunctioning of adrenal gland causes Addison's disease, which causes the impairing of judgment, loss of sleep, and weakness. The overactivity of this gland makes the individual energetic, persistent, and vigorous. If this gland is underactive, the individual becomes indecisively irritable and neurasthenic, right? Then we have the thyroid glands. The overactivity of the thyroid glands make the individual restless, irritable, worried, and unstable. The underactivity of this gland causes a disease known as cretinism. It makes the individual dull, sluggish, and lethargic. Pituitary glands, which are sometimes called the master glands, have their effect on personality and intelligence. They help in the growth of the body. Their underactivity causes dwarfness, and overactivity causes giantness. That is the size. Physical and mental activities are important. Sex glands are gonad. They exert great influence on sex life of the individual. If they are overactive, they may make the individual oversex. On the other hand, if they are underactive, the sex urge becomes weak. Then we go to the nervous system that plays a vital role in the development of personalities. Man's intellectual ability, motor ability, physical strength, and ability to adjust depends on the structure and modification. Nervous system limits one's learning capacity, so it is evident that the development of personality is influenced by the nature of nervous system. Frontal lobe has a specific role to play in the personality development of the person. Frontal lobes are considered to be emotional control center and home to the personality. There is no other part of the brain where lesions can cause wide variety of symptoms. The frontal lobes are involved in motor functions, problem solving, spontaneity, memory language, initiation, judgment, impulse control, and social behavior. And they are also extremely vulnerable to injury due to the frontal damage can be a dramatic change in behavior. A person's personality can undergo significant changes after an injury in the frontal lobe, especially when both lobes are involved. Left frontal lobe damages usually manifest as pseudo depression, and right frontal lobe damages pseudo psychopathic. Okay, so we can check it. These are all biological determinants, right? And now we move to the psychological determinants, right? What are the psychological factors that play a big role in functioning of human behavior and development? Main thing is motives, right? Now, what are motives? Internal state that arouses and directs behavior towards specific goals, right? They drive people to perceive, to think, and to act in certain ways that serves to satisfy their needs. So the behavior and the personality of the individual is led by the type of motives they have. Some of the important motives among human beings are achievement, power, affiliation, right? People who have high need of achievement prefer activities after that offer some but not too much challenges. They enjoy tasks where they are personally responsible for the outcome and prefer tasks where feedback on their performances available. People with high need for power are interested in controlling situation, controlling others, which makes them dominant personality. People with affiliation are, motives are warm, communicative, report more pleasant emotion when around people, smile, laugh, make more eye contact, which makes them a friendly personality. And then we have interests. Another psychological factor that influences personality is the interest of the person. The kind of interest an individual has reflects on the personality. People who are interested, they will be more, especially if they are interested in computer gaming, are less sociable than people who are interested in traveling. So it varies from individual to individual, right? What is the kind of interest one has, right? And how they develop that skill and what makes them, whether that skill, helps them to socialize or whether they want them to, isolate. So this all depends on the kind of interest the person has. And then we have the attitudes, right? Defined as a relatively lasting feeling, beliefs and behavior tendencies directed towards a specific people, group, ideas. And a positive attitude is very important for the personality development. Positive attitude enhances personality through positive traits. These admirable traits help individual grow in personal and professional aspects of his or her life. Some of the positive personality traits that are developed with positive attitude are enthusiasm, optimism, adaptability, self-esteem, confidence, and self-control. Then personality and intelligence have traditionally been viewed as distinct domains of human functioning. Research has found that IQ is positively related to traits such as toughness, leadership, self-disclosure, and emotional stability. Then we move on to the social determinants of personality. Right? What is this? That every society is characterized by cultural heritage that is transmitted from generation to generation to form a social heredity. Culture refers to the total life activities of society, what people think or do and feel and represent the culture of the society. Biological inheritance is the same in human beings all over the world. But it is different in the cultural and different cultural groups. And society is influence how children think, socialize, and how they become aware. So further, the family is the most significant single agent of socialization in all societies. Family is important as it has main responsibility in shaping the personalities of the children in the crucial early years of their life, especially where the family established for their choice, close emotional ties, learning the language, and begin to internalize the cultural norms and values, the pattern of social interaction within the family. All this provides us models later on to the personality to have certain behaviors, for children as they move into adulthood. So each family member will have unique set of experience that helps in the development of the person. Now, parents, they are the first contact, and they provide the focal point of all the culture. The personalities of the parents contribute more to the development of the personalities of children, right? For example, children having sympathetic father, understanding mother, right? Very socially acceptable, personally rewarding, or they can have dominating mother or nagging mother, right? Which may lead to emotional stability, shyness, or overprotected, which develops habit of dependency. They become selfish or inconsiderate. Rejected children often show social timidity and fear. Opportunities created by parents, right? They influence the children in their personalities. Same thing with siblings. Now, siblings have a great role to play in the behavior and adjustment, right? If they are dominating sibling, generally they are suppressed, like and introvert. If they are very, interactive and the quality of the sibling relationship and the gender will affect the personality of the individual. Family atmosphere, the kind of atmosphere that is in the family, it is very important. Whether it is very good or disruptive or backward or maladjusted personality or dysfunctional personality, the birth order of the child, the emotional climate, a family, cultural and economic conditions, all this influences the personality formation. And then we come to the school. Yeah, once the child grows up, yeah, from the family, the child's first interaction is the school, where socializing, where school is another socializing agent, where children go to school, they make friendship, right? And then that is important, the teacher's personality. In the school, the children come in contact with the teachers, whose personality also influences them. Then the curriculum of the school, the kind of curriculum that, whether it is rich, whether it is very active, whether it is dull, also affects the personality. Then the method of teaching, co-curricular activities, these also influence the personality development, general atmosphere of the school, peer group, culture, and significant personal experiences. Right? All these put together, right? They influence the personality of the person. Right? So with this, we close the personality. Right? So you have a summary here. Okay, you have a check your progress model, and then you have glossary. Please go through it. As you go through it, you'll find it is not very difficult to understand, which is quite easy. Okay, so we go to the next unit now, which is the unit 3. Now, unit 3 speaks about the life skill. Now, what is the objective of this unit? To understand the concept of life skills, to explore the main components of life skill, to understand the significance of life skill in our life, and know the importance of effective life skills. Right? Also, to understand relationship between life skills and individual personality development, to explore relationship pattern. Okay, so the concept of life skill has been very popularly used, especially right in the context of health and reproductive health. The WHO, while maintaining life skills education, conceptualized the life skill as a psychological competence. So what a life skill? A skill is a learned ability to do something well. So life skills are the study that individuals can develop to live a successful life, fruitful life, meaningful life. So life skills are psychosocial abilities that makes the individual to translate knowledge, attitudes, and values regarding their concerns into well-informed and healthy behaviors. Now, empowered with such skill, young people are able to take decisions based on the logical process, what to do, why to do, how to do, when to do it. So, WHO has defined life skills as abilities for adaptive and positive behavior that enables individuals to deal effectively with the demands and challenges of everyday life, right? Adaptive means the person is flexible in approach to be able to adapt to the situation, right? Which is a positive behavior, right? And looking forward in difficult circumstances can identify a ray of hope. Okay. So UNICEF defined life skills as a behavior change or behavior development approach designed to address a balance of three areas. Okay. Basically, what are those areas? They are knowledge, attitudes, and skill. Now, what are the components of life skill? They are broadly categorized by WHO. Now, what are they? They are the cognitive thinking, right? Cognitive is thinking. So that is a cognitive skills are thinking skill, which includes decision making, problem solving, information gathering, right? So when an individual is skilled enough to be able to evaluate the future present actions and attitudes of a individual, analyze influence of one of their own values and the values around them. Okay, so these are the thinking skill that comes under cognitive. The second one is the social and interpersonal skills. Now, these include both the verbal as well as the non-verbal communication, active listening, and the ability to express feeling and giving feedback. Right. So, in this category, negotiation, refusal skills, assertiveness skills, and directly affects the ability to manage conflict. Okay. So, empathy, which is the ability to listen, to understand others' needs, is the key to interpersonal skill. Teamwork and the ability to cooperate, including expressing respect for those around us. Development of this skill enables adolescent to be accepted in society. These skills results in acceptance of social norms that provide foundation of adult social behavior. And the third one is the emotional skills, right? That refers to increase of internal focus of control that the individuals believe that they can make a difference in the world and affect change. So self-esteem, right? Self-awareness, self-evaluation skills, ability to set goals, all are a part of the more general category of self-management skills. Anger, grief, anxiety must all be dealt with the individuals to learn to cope, loss, trauma. So stress and time management are the key, are the positive thinking and the relaxation techniques that comes under the emotional skills. Okay. And then we have the social and interpersonal skills. What are they? Communication skills, assertive skills, cooperative skills, cooperation skills, empathy, and emotion skills, managing emotions, managing stress, etc. Now, what are the significance of life skill? According to the developmental scientists, early adolescent stages 10 to 14, which is singled out as a critical moment of opportunity for building skills and positive habits. Since at this age, there is a recognition of self, ability to think and solve problems. An early adolescent is expected to move from security of a middle school to challenge of a secondary school education. The wider social context of early and middle adolescent provides varied situation in which there is motivation to practice new skills with peers and other individuals outside the family identity. So the transition from high school is a is also a challenge for the student, both academically as well as socially. Effective strategies are coping skill, planning the time management, problem solving, decision making skill are all factors that are instrumental in helping students to become successful, especially during the transition period. Now, according to the National Curriculum Framework 2005, learning has become isolated activity which does not encourage children to link knowledge to their lives. Knowledge has to be connected to life outside the school. That's what life skill does. In the Indian scenario, we see there are so many issues, right? One is the rapid industrialization, like so much of technology advancement, globalization, and then the target for international policy, target for international market because of the new economic policy that India has signed, and the huge population and economy not keeping with the space, right? And then poor infrastructure for welfare, law, order, transition in families, right? All the joint families once upon a time, right? Now they are moving into smaller and nuclear family because of urbanization, people migrating from the rural to the urban in search of jobs, right? And settling down with the smaller families, right? Academic and career stress, the kind of stress, the curriculum that is there for the children, all this stress. And then the parents no longer are a role model, and suppression and exploitation of adolescent girls, gender issues, where the girl children are not, are not encouraged, not motivated to, study further. All these are part of the gender issues. Okay, then when you look at the actual problems of the youth, there is so many, right? Young girls getting married early, then there is domestic labor, children running away from home, street children, domestic child labor, sexual violence, domestic violence, communal religious, political accident, riots, suicide, and all. Right? There's also abuse of substances like drugs, alcohol, marijuana, right? Physical domestic violence, alcohol, HIV, AIDS. And then there is also early sexual experimentation, right? Teenage marriages, high risk behavior, drug usage, all this. Okay. Now, change in the outlook, right? The change in the outlook towards money, power, pressure to perform, pleasure seeking at any cost, prompt results. Persons are more important than people. Things become more important than people. The national curriculum framework emphasizes that education as well must prepare students to face the challenges of life. Okay, so that's how we find the life skill as something very relevant, especially for this time. Because when you empower the young people, especially the adolescents, with the life skill, they are able to develop and reduce specific risk behaviors. Right, like the person is less likely to resort to antisocial or high risk behavior. Persons develop healthy behaviors when you introduce this life skill early in their lives. Right? The studies on life skill training indicate that life skills promote positive and social awareness. Right? It also leads to lasting and healthy and social consequences. Individuals develop ability to reduce risky behaviors. And then we know the importance of life skill. What are the importance, right? Especially in the kind of scenario that we are in. It helps us to develop behaviors that enable to deal effectively to the demands and the challenges of the current time. It helps a person reduce psychosocial distress and symptoms like depression and anxiety. It also helps to avoid manipulation or exploitation by others, creates awareness in view of internal focus, empowers individuals to take initiative and control of his life, promote mental health and self-esteem, help in proper interaction with others in one's life, help person to rise above emotional impasses that rises, daily conflicts, entangle relationship, individual develops ready specific behavior. Person is likely to resort to antisocial or high behavior. Okay, so these are all the benefits, right? These are all the importance for develop negotiation skill, communication skill, better relationship, regulate emotive emotion, regulating emotions like anger, anxiety, enhancing decision making. Okay, so there is a link between life skill and the personality development, right? So when you apply it properly, the technique, what is the kind of a link that is there to develop enough control over his or her actions, thoughts and behavior, make informed decision, make choices that leads to positive behavior, personal development, personal maturation, right? A process of improving self to life skill, applying them in our day-to-day activity, enhance personal life, work and professional, to increase our consciousness, build our positivity. Right? Personal development is a framework where one works toward personal positive change, involves measuring whether the changes are taking place. Change is geared towards positive. It consists of individual set of goals, benchmark, right? Communication and feedback that lead to path they enable of the same. Okay. So these are the link between the life skill and the personality. So today we have completed unit 1, that is competencies. We understood what is the definition of competencies, right? And the nature of competencies, and then we levels of competencies, then we have the personality, we have the nature of personality, the determinants of personality, and then now we came to life skill, and we will stop here at the link between the life skill and the personality. We shall continue tomorrow, same time, same place, with a relationship between life skill and the individual personality development. Okay, so we are in chapter 3. Thank you, students, for listening. right? Please go through your notes. Your books are good. They have given you a lot of content. Please read through your books, understand, check your progress, look at the model questions, try to answer it, right? Look at the glossary. So thank you very much for listening. May God bless you.